Good evening to each and everyone in Guyana and out of Guyana. Before I continue, please subscribe to my video and hit the bell so you could get the next video when we present it. Thank you for your cooperation. Well, let me get down to business now. I have read some of your comments, and yes, I have to admire those who make the question to me. Let me deal with the United Force first. My fellow brothers and sisters in Guyana, for those who are not aware and was misled, the late Peter Degas with the United Force did not sell out Guyana, nor did not sell out nobody. He just do what was right to save the nation from destroying one another. And when I said that, Burnham did not care what happened to the Indian race once he get power. And Dr. Jagan did not care what happened to the country, providing he gets what he wants. But one must remember that Burnham and Jagan was in the same political party, PPP, until they break away. There were more black people into the PPP party from the beginning. And find out from all of them, they will tell it to you. But what caused the problem? Jeanette Jagan happens to be, it's alleged, the relative of some family who they claim was shot down in the 50s for communism in America. It's alleged. I wasn't there, I don't know. We are following hearsay and hearsay. And Dr. Jagan was given an opportunity by Kennedy to change his tone and his language and support democracy and imperialism or capitalism, whatever you want to call it. But Dr. Jagan was bent on communist ideology. And yes, he told Kennedy he could stop the clock, but he cannot stop communism. For you, the illiterate Indian, not saying it with an insult, not knowing better, it was the call for your country and your people to be free according to you East Indian descendant, which I am also a part of. But one must ask a question. Does any Indian understand the meaning of communism? And can any East Indian descendant live under a communist government? Tell me, when y'all love money, y'all love to fight for property what don't belong to you, you think you could live under a communist government? And you like to visit the Obia man and the Kalimite church to hurt each other? You would have been killed if Guyana was a communist country. Check out the people in Cuba. Chile is a prime example with Allende and Pinochet. Guatemala, Mexico, Honduras, not forgetting Nicaragua, which was just in the 80s. Think of it. Then Venezuela, and then many others, not forgetting the African continent. But let me give you a rundown. What is independence? I think independence in the true sense means the people who it belongs to must be given the freedom of their country, which means from the colonial master who are taking it, hand it back to those who it belongs, such as the whole of Africa, India, and China. You might heard about a man named Adolf Hitler, the late. A man who killed 6 million Jews, massacred them. They were human beings. Gas chamber them. They were human beings. We condemn these things. But millions of others died fighting the German man by the name of Adolf Hitler. It so happens after that, Europe was destroyed. It was broken. Holland, France, Belgium, England, and some Scandinavian country that was the colonial master in Africa, India, Caribbean, had no money, so they had to give it up. I must agree that India was and is independent because ruled by Indians' descendants. I must also agree that China And Hong Kong is independent, ruled by Chinese descendants. And the whole of Africa is independent, ruled by Africans descendant. But when come to the Caribbean and Guyana, it is not independent, ladies and gentlemen. Because I cannot take away somebody's property and give it to you. When you are aware that you was the grandchildren of slavery and cheap labor. What is cheap labor and slavery? It is plain and simple. Before I get to that, let me correct the brothers who say the GAR betrayed, the UF betrayed the country. And I want to make it clear, if the GAR did not join hands with Burnham, the blacks at the time, they're ready to wipe the Indians off the face of the earth. But at the same time, there was a lot of great and good black people who object to that, but was the hooligans, the uneducated, and the Highlanders that was brought into the country by foreign government. And they would have stopped at nothing, and the X-13 plan would have go into focus. Read the West Part 1 and 2 on trial. Jagan did not hide it. My friend, Diga went to Dr. Jagan to join the government for an independent Guyana or dependent Guyana. And Jagan reject him and call him an imperialist stooge. He says he will not join with a traitor for capitalism country or imperialists. And Digar had no choice. While both sides of the fence, the PPP members and supporters on the East Coast, Canal, East Bank, and many other areas, Lenora was beating the drivers on the DIA truck that owned by Digar with Pepsi, Banks DIH. And when they go to the black neighborhood again, the same thing happened. That Digar had to turn the company to shareholder for $1 a share. You illiterate people at the time, uneducated and don't understand the meaning of what is true leadership and what is independent. Due to major race, you see racism. India, you see black. Well, let me end that part for the first question was asked to me about the UF. We didn't betray nobody. The guy didn't betray nobody. He bring about peace by joining hands with Burnham. And yes, in one of the comments from a brother says the black people was first in Guyana. I want to make it clear, the Portuguese was there before the blacks. And they was rebellious and they couldn't produce because whether they were going slow or not, we don't know. But at the same time, then they bring the blacks. They did not kidnap your ancestor. They bought them and bring them into country that they was colonizing. And therefore, it was labor. And then the Indian came, the Chinese came after. And they couldn't able neither. Then the East Indian descendant arrived in the Pacific and the Caribbean and Guyana by the colonial master. So you, the black, should stop insulting the Indian, because if they didn't come with the cheap labor, bit and a half, 2 bit, shilling and farthing, maybe the chain would still be on your ankle. So when they arrive, they change the scope of life and destiny for the blacks who were slaves. And therefore, we must understand clearly. But where comes the hate between the Indian and the blacks? Thanks to Burnham and Cheddi Jagan and with foreign agents who try to entertain it and cause a division. But on both races, there were friends and family mixed up. You have black marrying to Indian, Indian marrying to black. Douglas children, as we call it. I am an offspring of a mixed race. And I want to make it clear. Burnham played the game and Cheddi played the game. And Digar also was there. He was finance minister, only to be removed by Burnham to appoint his own black brothers or whoever at the time. Then they put a Chinese man named Arthur Chung to be the president of the country. Then they move him, and then they put Burnham the Kabaka. And Chedi and Burnham was never enemy. If you don't believe me, ask Nagamutu, who says in Queens. They have the video, they could give it to you. He used to take the news to Jagan and Burnham at Belfield. So he was a dog in the boat. So what I'm trying to tell you, Indian and black people, the two leaders play politics and divide y'all to rule. And then Burnham was saying in nationalizing, justly nationalizing because that was Jagan idea. And when he says 49-51, you, the blacks who support, he said the man is right. 51 for Guyana, 49 for the European white man, as you say. But I want to tell you, it wasn't that. It was 49 for Chedi, 51 for Burnham. But they talk across the table. Educate yourself, people. Then comes what happens today. Right away through. What happens to the Indian in the 1960s must never be forgotten. How long Guyana history is continuing in the horizon. Indian was humiliated, beat, robbed, and raped in many areas. MacDo, Agricola, Buxton, Pleasance, and then Amstel, and many other parts. India was attacked and beaten. Mackenzie, 6-year children, girls' bottle was pushed into the private parts by black people. So if the Indians said the black people do it, you can't blame them. If it's a tiger, they call it a tiger. If it's a lion, they say lion. You can't see a lion and call it a sheep. And you cannot see a wolf and say it's a goat. You got to say what you say. For eyes is the only thing make you know, but there's a difference. Not all black people do that, because black people save Indians from that. And not all Indians was uneducated and ignorant, throwing bottle with fire bottle, and fighting back. Think, ladies and gentlemen, stop fall into the racial tension. The two party leaders have lied to you. Desmond Height has made a change. And when I see people joining party crossing the floor, when Guyana get independence, the dependence I call it, 7 or 8 Indians crossed the floor from the PPP and joined the PNC. So you tell me what happens again? The two-party play. But their children and grandchildren will be living in luxury, while yours will be in pocketry, jail, and drug use, domestic abuse, and prostitution, and drug sellers, and nobody to talk about in the future. But for you, the modern and young generation, I urge you to come together and unite for a cooperative Guyana, a Guyana for all Guyanese. And what is happening in Mocha and other places where the government is moving the squatters, I condemn it for one reason, because no Guyanese is supposed to squat or rent house. They should have given land to build their house and money to build it. Let us assume you didn't have the money at the time, but with a piece of land and the transport, they could get a loan from the bank and build their own dream house, so they didn't have to pay rent. That's the kind of Guyana that I'm talking about, where the great-grandchildren of slaves and cheap labor could enjoy the fruit of another country that don't belong to them. Because you are claiming India, and the other one is claiming Africa. My friend, I want to make it clear. If you have a Quran, a Bible, I ask you to surrender it, because there's a passage, thou shalt not covet thy brother's property. And yes, my African brothers around the world out of Africa, living in these parts of the world, America, Canada, England, the uneducated, and even some of the educated, the white man slave us. The white man take our resources. You are lucky that he brought you out. He didn't kidnap you. He buy you and bring you. It was slave trade. And if he is wrong, Abraham had sex with Hagar, his slave. And many of your prophets were sold as slaves. Think of it. My friend, stop the nonsense. We must not look down 100 years ago, but look forward for another 100 years to come, where our generation can enjoy this world. Stop it. The PNC or APNU are not with y'all, only a few selected. And the PPPC is not with y'all, it's a few selected. Why ministers in government is above the law? The law of the country should be for every man and woman, not for you who speak out against politicians, and not for corrupt businessmen who bribing police, judges, and magistrates, and also prosecutor. And politicians pick up the phone and say, "Lock up George Karai because I speak out against them." You all have children and grandchildren. They shall answer the call. We must thank the country that opened up the door to the East Indian descendants during Barnum time into power. The raping and the killing and the kick down door. Is that fair? How you, the blacks, would feel, you in your village, and a set of Chinese or European or Indian attack your village, chopping up, beating, and burning? What would you say? An alien? A green person? Ladies and gentlemen, stop being an asshole. You go say what you see. If it's tiger, you call tiger. If it's elephant, you call elephant. If it's a dog, you go say dog. You can't call a dog a lion and a lion a sheep. You got to say what you have, what you see. I'm going to tell you this story and I want you to think about it. You ask what I want. I don't want power. I want equality. A Guyana for all. I want to see an Amerindian man or woman to be at the head of their country. Because Guyana is not independent, it's dependent. So with that, before I end, let me give you the story. A young boy went out with his flock of sheep. It was attacked by tiger. Kill all. He went back into the village crying. The villagers asked him, "Why are you crying?" He said, "A lot of tigers attack my flock and kill all." The people couldn't believe it. Why did he say wolves? He had to say what he witnessed. So when an Indian talk about you, the black people, what you don't get angry. And when you black people talk about the corruption of the Indian, they shouldn't get angry, but you have faults. So wake the hell up and unite and let your politicians hold them accountable for the crime that was committed against the country. And no crime must go unpaid. And stop fighting for land and buying dam because it's an Amerindian country and nobody in Guyana have the right to sell it. And an Amerindian have a right to get a piece of land. Any part of Guyana is their birthrights. Thank you and have a good night.